Scotland has thousands of miles of coastline, much more than even England, so it's only natural that many Scottish people would be drawn to a life at sea. Some, however, were drawn to a life of piracy. Today I'm going to share about a few of them. The first I want to talk about was a man named Alexander Dalzell. He was born in Port Patrick, Scotland, and he went to sea at an early age. He quickly gained a reputation for dishonesty and lying. It is thought that he joined the crew of the pirate Henry Every in the West Indies, until eventually leaving to form his own crew in the Caribbean. He and his crew were not having much success when suddenly a large Spanish warship appeared. The Spanish ship was larger and better armed than the smaller pirate ship, so they did not expect the pirates to put up a fight. Legend says that Dalzell had holes drilled into the bottom of his ships so that his men would have to fight as their ship was sinking. The Spanish were caught by surprise by the attack. It is said that the captain of the Spanish ship was so confident that he had gone to supper in his cabin, thinking the pirates would either surrender or flee. The pirates were able to capture the ship, and now flushed with success, they attempted to capture a group of Spanish ships carrying pearls out of Jamaica. This time, though, the pirates were captured. Rather unusually, the Spanish did not imprison them, but instead let them go after taking their ships. Dalzell now made his way to Jamaica, where he captured yet another ship and set sail for the area around Cuba. Again, he attempted to capture some Spanish ships, and again he was captured by the Spanish, but this time they decided to execute him on board a ship. The story goes that he was able to make a daring escape by stabbing his jailer and jumping overboard with two empty jugs that he used to float to shore. Then apparently he was found by another group of pirates who he managed to talk into attacking and successfully capturing the very Spanish ship that he had just escaped from. But as they were sailing the ship near Jamaica, a storm struck and the ship sank. Alexander managed to make his way safely to shore. Alexander now decided to do what many pirates did and become a privateer, working under the commission of the French, attacking British ships during the War of Spanish Succession. It was said that Alexander was a Jacobite, and since James Stuart was now living in France and supported by the French, Alexander was quite willing to attack British ships under the authority of the French king. For a time, he was very successful taking many British ships, but finally he was captured and taken to England to be hanged, drawn, and quartered. At this point, the Earl of Mar, having become fascinated by the exploits of this pirate, stepped in and was able to get a royal pardon granted to Alexander. Alexander immediately began his pirating ways. Eventually, he was captured yet again, this time in Scotland, and taken to London, where he finally met his end by being hung in 1715. Next, we have the story of John Gow, the Orkney pirate. Gow was thought to have been born in Caithness on the north coast of Scotland. His family moved when he was quite young to Stromness in Orkney. According to tradition, he ran away to sea as a young lad. Eventually, when he was 26 years old, he became the second mate of a trading vessel, the Caroline. The voyage proved long, and many of the crew began to grow unhappy with the quality of the food and the perceived unfair treatment by the captain. Sensing the unrest, the captain had his officers, including Gow, prepare weapons to defend themselves. Unknown to the captain, Gow was actually a leader in the planned mutiny. The mutiny began when some of the crew snuck in and killed the ship's surgeon, first mates, and others. There are various versions of what happened next. Either the surgeon managed to stagger up on deck, and the noise that he made drew the captain out of his cabin, or else the cry that a man had fallen overboard brought the captain up on deck. Either way, the captain was attacked by several of the mutinous crew, but despite receiving several wounds, he continued to fight until Gow himself arrived and shot the captain and tossed his body overboard. Gow was then elected the new captain of the crew. The ship was renamed the Revenge, and the crew began a life of piracy, attacking the ships in the area. Eventually, after many successful raids, Gow decided to head back to his home area of Orkney. There he attempted to establish himself as a wealthy merchant, using the name Mr. Smith, and renaming the ship the George. Unfortunately for Gow, a merchant came into port who recognized the pirate ship and knew of Gow's reputation. Many of Gow's crew had actually been forced into their life of piracy, and at this point many of them abandoned him and went to the authorities. Gao decided his best chance was to make a raid on some rich property and then try to escape again to the open sea. While at school as a child, he had met James Fay of Carrick House on the Isle of Ide. Gao now decided to attempt a raid on the house, but his ship was caught in the strong currents that flow between Ide and the small island called the Calf of Ide, and it ran aground. Gao now began to write to his old acquaintance Fay, who finally convinced the pirate to give himself up to the authorities. Gao was taken to England, where he was tried and on the 11th of June, 1725, was executed. It is said that he asked for a quick death, and so the executioner decided to pull on Gao's legs to try and hang him quicker. But instead, he pulled so hard that the rope broke, and so Gao had to actually climb back up and be hung again, this time successfully. There are many other pirates born in Scotland I can mention, such as the infamous Captain Kidd, whose buried treasure many are still looking for. I could even tell of men such as John Paul Jones, the great American Revolutionary War hero and father of the American Navy, who was born in Scotland and was, in essence, an American privateer. In other words, a pirate working for the Americans, attacking and raiding British ships and ports. But those stories will have to wait for another time. For now, this is goodbye. I hope you've enjoyed this Caledonian pirate stories.